Okay. And I have, in the past, have been the early college high school project director, and Kirsten is our new program analyst at Educate Texas. Kirsten, do I have control or do you, because it's not?
You had control and I just took it back. So I will give it back to you and you can hit the right arrow to move on to the next one.
Okay, thank you. Nothing like having technical difficulties. So we're so glad that we could have with us today a special guest from June Giddings from Houston. She's the director of Texas OnCourse, and she's going to be sharing with you later today some information about a policy that has been set in the state of Texas to help with counselors. It's not allowing me to take control. I am so sorry. Kirsten, can you take the next slide, please? Thank you.
Okay.
So Educate Texas is, Kirsten and I both work with Educate Texas, and for the ones of you that might not be familiar with our work, we are a public-private partnership that works with public and higher education systems around the state of Texas. We have a proven track record for designing and expanding successful strategies that impact the state of Texas. And our big focus right now is around our 2020 vision, as well as supporting Governor Abbott and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's 60 by 30 goal that by the year 2030, we will have 60% of the Texas students earning a post-secondary degree. Because we've also learned that that's what research is showing, that's where our focus is at this point in time. During the past, since the creation of Educate Texas, which was founded in 2004, we have led the successful creation of over 250 STEM academies and early college high schools, serving more than 100,000 students across the state of Texas. These models that we have been actively involved with have been generated strong gains in our student achievement for predominantly economically disadvantaged minority students, which has helped us to broaden the portfolio to other critical areas for reform. And as you notice here, our vision is focused around ensuring that every student in Texas is prepared for educational and workforce success. And through our values of our own organization, we value the fact that we work together with our internal and external partners to collaborate. We're looking to make sure that our goals have a focus to impacting the students, and that we're open and honest and accountable to all of our voices that work with us, and we are a continued learning vision is our work in our work. So could you take the next slide, please? So just a little background about Educate Texas. We're around connecting and advising our public-private partnerships. Many of you, I heard that Lupe Chavez is on the phone today from PSJA, which is one of our strong partners that we've been working with for many years since the beginning of Texas High School Project before we became Educate Texas. And we always are looking for sparking that innovation, finding those best practices that are happening around the state of Texas, as well as accelerating those good practices, and to make sure that we're able to communicate and share across the state and the nation promising practices that are proving to accelerate students in post-secondary and workforce success. The next slide, please. So just as a reminder, as I said at the very beginning, if you have questions, you can address those directly to Kirsten DeLay, and she will actually be keeping those for us, and we will address those at the very end. And I also want to thank JFF today for inviting us to participate in their community practice webinars that they are having. So just as a curiosity, we would like to know exactly who we have on the call today. So we have a poll here. If you would please mark at this point who's on the webinar. We're anxious to see who's a part of the conversation today.
So I'm on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My name is Kim McKenna, and I'm at West Generation Academy in Denver Public Schools.
Okay, can you actually take and hit the webinar poll that tells us who...
I tried to click on it, and then it said that I was already registered, and it wouldn't take me anywhere. So all I have is
that same thing happened to me.
Yeah. So all I do is have the phone. I clicked on join the meeting, and it says register, and then when I go to register, it says, oh, you're already registered, and it kicks me out.
You should have gotten an email, most likely from Caesar, whenever you had registered for the webinar, and that link should take you there. If not, I'm so sorry. I'm not totally sure how we can fix that right now, but we're glad to have you called in. If you have another email account or something like that and you'd like to re-register, you're welcome to do that as well.
Okay.
I don't see the place to put in full responses either. You should have a poll option available by your chat.
And if you're able to see your poll question at the very bottom, it's really light, is a submit button at the very bottom right once you answer your question, if you're able to see that.
We apologize that you're having challenges to actually access. JFF is not actually on the phone at this point to help fix the issue for you to be able to see the screen, so we apologize for that. So we can see that we have a lot. We post-secondary, higher ed are with us, school counselors. So thank you all for joining us today. So the other thing that we were curious to know, just out of curiosity, we're here to talk about counselors, and we know that our counselors within our public school systems, they have a lot of work and responsibility. So we have a second poll that we're just curious to know what would be your thoughts if we could look at poll number question 2. And we'd like to know, where do you think that the majority of the time is spent today? If you were a high school counselor, where would your time be spent? It'll be interesting to know, because I know I have some counselors on the phone, so they know exactly where their time is being spent.
Where am I spending it, or where do I want to be spending it?
I love it. Where do you actually spend it?
Well, I actually spend it being more reactive than proactive. I work in a high-needs school, 95% free and reduced lunch, and so I end up spending more of my time keeping them calm than being proactive. I'm the first counselor this school has had in 4 years, so they're still getting concept formation on what my role is. So my druthers would be going in the classroom and doing presentations with Naviance, which we have. That would be my preference. And do post-secondary options.
Thank you. Okay, I see that the poll questions are coming in at this time. Non-counseling related activities, yes, that would be where we see a lot of that happening. So I know that there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of different opinions of what high school counselors are doing and how their time is spent. And so that's what we're going to focus around today, because the research is showing that if we spend more time with college advising to our high school students, that that it's correlated to having a higher college going rate. And we can see that evident in a lot of research. PSJA is a good example of that, and I know they're on the phone. And they do spend a lot of time with each of their students around college advisement. Thank you, Kirsten. Could you go to the next slide? And my colleague, Kirsten, is going to share with you a timeline to college that high school counselors should be considering as they are planning their work with their individual students.
All right, thank you, Denise. So most of us on the line have probably gone to college, and I want you guys to think back to your time preparing for college in high school. So based off of a couple of different recommendations from the federal government and from what I've seen in my own experience, I know that as freshmen, when they're preparing for college, they tend to get an overview on the importance of GPA and grades and how they need to maintain a good GPA throughout their high school career in order to get into college. They also need to know that it's important to take challenging classes, that if you are studying things that are a little too easy, that's not going to fully prepare you for college. And recently, there's also been a big push in having extracurricular and community involvement as well in your high school career. And there's also kind of the exploration of career fields, figuring out, well, what do you want to do when you grow up, and being able to experience different career field options. And all of that continues throughout high school, right? And then as we get to the sophomore year, that's where you tend to start seeing a little bit more testing, the PSAT or the ACT Aspire. Sometimes students will start going on college visits. In the junior year, they add in, kind of start seeing where they would want to go to college, getting that list of colleges, perfecting their essay writing, not necessarily their final essays for college, but they're developing these skills, and they're taking their college entrance exams, the SAT and ACT. In Texas, we also have something called the TSI, starting to get a sense of how am I going to pay for college? If they haven't already been saving, then they'll probably have a minor panic. But also learning about how to apply for the financial aid through the FAFSA, et cetera. And then their senior year, they're actually applying for the FAFSA, which we'll talk about in a moment, but is going to start opening sooner. They are applying for colleges themselves, and they need that support all year. Hopefully, they're also applying for scholarships. And then there's all this college knowledge that they need to have in order to go off to college. They need to know the vocabulary. What's a credit hour? What am I majoring in? What am I minoring in? Do schools have core requirements? What are those? How do I enroll in classes? How do I buy books? How do I talk to professors? And how do I pay for it all? So when I think back to my college career and who was helping me through this, I realized that that's not necessarily the college advisor that everyone has. So for high school students, the question here is, who's a college advisor for them? Historically, and I know this is true for me, a lot of times parents and families and communities have supported students through this process. The goal of the job of the high school was to give them the academics, and outside supports have helped students apply to college. However, like with us at Educate Texas, we're focused on students who don't tend to have those opportunities. Frequently, first-generation or low-income families may not have experience in the college process, and so a lot of that college advising role is falling onto the school campuses, oftentimes high school counselors. And like Kathy had mentioned earlier, a lot of times you've got a lot going on, so we want to make sure that college advisors on school campuses have appropriate caseloads that's manageable to reach out to all children and give them the support that they need to go to college. Additionally, a common theme in education these days is around dual credit, AP courses, early college access, that sort of thing. And so it's even more important that campuses have college advisors or people who play the role of college advisors on campus, so that way students can develop that early college knowledge necessary for success. If you look at the graph that you see on your screen right now, this is a percentage of time spent counseling, the percentage of time counseling staff spent assisting students with college readiness, selection and applications by four-year college going rate. Here's what that means. Down on the left side where we see low, that's a low college going rate. So for schools that have low college going rate, most of the counselors spent 11 to 20% of their time helping students with college readiness, selections, and applications. Once we get over towards the high college going rate, we start seeing that we're getting a larger percentage of time spent by counseling staff assisting students with college readiness, selection, and applications. So in sum, there's a correlation between the amount of time spent with students helping them prepare for college and the rate of college going in those student populations. counselors' priorities are also very important. So, again, we see the low, middle, and high college-going rates here. And we're looking at the emphasis that counseling programs place on preparing college for post-secondary schooling. So almost all of these sections have it as their #1 goal. They're the majority of, let me figure out how to phrase this appropriately. In our low college-going rates, we're seeing that 32% of the counselors did prioritize it. But in our high college-going rates, we're seeing that 72% of counseling programs emphasize the preparation of students for post-secondary schooling. So what we're seeing overall is that the priorities, making sure that that's the focus, and actually being able to spend time on it, are correlated to higher rates of college going. Denise, I'll pass it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Kirsten. And, you know, the value of why we were sharing that research, and you're thinking, oh, I know those checklists, it comes back to the idea that there's a lot of time that we need to manage as high school counselors, and sometimes our administration is not giving us the actual, so that it is a high priority, as Kirsten was showing in that last one, but maybe at the time that you're not being given to be able to meet each one of those students' needs. And so this is what we're trying to share with you, is to stop and think about, what does your day need to look like if it's going to require more college advising? How can I get to where I can meet the needs of each one of our students within our school? The next slide, please. So what do we do about building a college-going culture? So again, research is defining that there's 4 characteristics, and that is around that building that a rigorous academic curricular and program. Is AP and dual credit, is that a focus and priority for your school? And I know that that requires time as you are building that program, but we know that if we can get more students college ready to where they actually leave high school college ready and they're not having to go into developmental courses, that we are actually seeing that they will actually be more successful in their post-secondary career as well. So at your high schools, it needs to become that college going is the mission and expectation. I love down in the valley, in the Rio Grande Valley, when you walk the halls at one school in Hidalgo, and all you see is the signs of all the banners where they're seeing the different college banners posted everywhere. The flags are flying, and they just feel that atmosphere that college is important. We also need to make sure that there's comprehensive college information and resource services. Many we'll have the career centers, but I know in Texas we have a lot of GO centers that were very popular back in 2002, and they have continued. And the reason they called it the GO Center is because it was the idea that you went there for anything and everything that dealt with college, you went there. So it was called GO Center, so that everybody would have a uniform name. And we coordinate our systemic college support, and that we're ensuring that our kids have a well-rounded preparation to all success. We want to ensure that there's equity in all of these areas. Many times there's the focus to our top 10%, but we need to stop and step back and look to make sure that the students that are enrolling in our AP and dual credit, is our expectations, is it around all of our populations? And that should be where we need to stop and think about that it's college for all and preparation, and not just your top 10%. The next slide, please. So as we were looking and preparing, you know, sometimes it's a good time for each of your campuses to step back and do a needs assessment or an analysis to see what is the culture that is actually happening on your campus. These are some sample surveys, questions that can be addressed to your student body, and this will give you an idea of where you can actually see your students' mentality about the college-going culture, because many times our adults have the idea that it's there, but it's the students that are going to give us the true picture. You know, and this could be recommended, and you can find these free surveys online. Actually, in a minute, I'll show you where you can actually access this through NCAN. They had a tool. But, you know, if you did this every year at the beginning of the year or at the end of each school year and you were able to regulate to monitor, you could see whether you were seeing growth, that your students had the perspective that it was expected that all students would go to college. So it would be a great formative tool that you could consider using. The next slide is talking about the school inventory on college culture. So this would be for the adults at your high school to step back and look at where are we? Are we at the point that it's currently in practice? How effective is it? Is the practice in place? Can you indicate the reasons? Do you have the evidence to show that that the needle is moving around your college-going culture? And this is also a great way for you to set and have a reflection each year to make sure that everyone on staff is on the same message that you're putting around college-going cultures at your campus. The next slide, please. These are actual resources that we had found. I remember, I believe it was Kathy at the very beginning, was sharing that she wishes she had more time to be able to be in the classroom. And, you know, building that college-going culture, there's actually curriculums out there, and I know in Texas it's required now that our counselors actually need to be in the classroom, and there are actually lessons out there, and this is a resource that you can use to help you from NACAC around developing curriculum for your middle school and high school students. And then the two different survey tools that we shared earlier, that was found from the National College Access Network, and there are great resources and toolkits there that we would advise you to take time to look at and consider as you're building your college-going culture as a counselor, because many times that's going to depend on the high school counselor to set that mentality and mode within each of the campuses. The next one. As Kirsten was sharing earlier when she was talking about the seniors and FAFSAs, we're real excited that in 2016-17, we're hoping that we're going to see that FAFSAs are going to become easier than they have been in the past few years. Now, it's still real important that each of that your counselors and college facilitators that are working at your campuses get updated training each year. And you can find these webinars, and I'll share with you in a minute a place that we always have within our website for updated webinars and trainings around. But the Department of Education each year will provide updated training that goes through the FAFSA so that you can make sure and ensure that your students understand the process. We are very excited that this past year in October that President Obama signed in what many people are referring to as PPY, which is prior year. That's exciting because what does that mean for us? As yesterday was the day, I believe, that taxes was the deadline. And you know what? We're seeing that many of our seniors haven't completed their FAFSAs for this year because of the fact they're waiting for their parents to complete their income tax. Well, moving forward with our senior class of 2017, we're excited to say that the FAFSA applications are actually going to open on October 1st. What does this mean for us? That means that that your senior class of 2017 will be able to use their parents' 2015 tax returns to complete their FAFSA. That's great because that means that we're not, because many of our deadline dates for FAFSA actually was March 1st or March 15th for priority deadline. And here it is that many parents just maybe have completed their tax returns as of this past week. Now they've got to actually complete the FAFSA. And we know that the sooner you get it in, the quicker that the colleges are able to process your students' award letters to share with them the financial means that they're going to be able to support them. So we're hoping that this will help with the verification, because it means that we're not going to be on crunch time anymore. We also hope that that the fact that we're going to be able to do college admissions, financial aid all at one time, hopefully that as you're thinking and planning for next year, that this will be easier for your high school counselors. I would highly recommend that as high school counselors or even higher eds, if you have not reached out to your local ISDs, to think of a plan and start planning an action of how you're going to address this year. Just last week, we had our Texas College Access Network meeting, and we actually had representatives from UT Austin, Texas State University, and Texas A&M Commerce. And, you know, they're still trying to figure out how PPY is going to work for them at the university level. So it's very important that for the ISDs not to be waiting, counselors should be reaching out at this point to your local regional your higher ed partners, and start thinking of a plan of how you're going to roll this out for the fall. After we get past this first year, I'm sure things will actually smooth out. But we know we're going to see some bumps in the road being the first year for our prior year timeline. So if we'll look at the next slide, we have someone. Could you please mute your phone, please? We're picking up some feedback. Thank you. So the FAFSA events are very important and are very common around National College Gold Sunday.
Yes.
Is key.
Oh, good. So the one this Friday. So we're very glad you could join us.
Kirsten, can you mute that person's phone?
No, I cannot. Shannon, could you go ahead and mute your line, please? Thank you.
So as we were talking about FAFSA events, these have been very popular. I would say it started back years ago that they would do great big pushes around College Gold Sunday. In Texas, we have what we call Super Saturdays, and we're seeing that the community events are really, when the community is coming together to work with the ISDs and the IHEs, that we're actually seeing an increase in our FAFSA submissions and completion. But it's real important, I know that at Dallas Commit, that as they have prepared big events.
Might be bleeding into another conference call, but I don't hear anyone else on the line, so I think we should be okay. This is Shannon, Annalise, and Natalie.
Shannon and Annalise, you're still on our conference call as well. If you could go ahead and mute in the background, that would be great, since we're hearing your side conversations as well.
Okay. I'm not speaking, so it must be the other person.
Oh, it was showing. Sorry, Shannon. It was showing it was you. Apologize. So just to know, there are some great resources out there on College Gold Sunday website, and they're in how to actually create an event to have, as well as training resources to help you with your FAFSA. So we also know that if we don't have completed FAFSAs, there will be no money for our students, so it's very important to help them.
Couldn't make it over. Double booked for a couple meetings. How'd it go?
It went really well. I mean, it was a short one. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Someone from DOE was there to talk about.
Kirsten, would you like to talk about low-cost, high-impact approaches?
Yes, ma'am. I would really also, so I can actually see the names of the people, and some of you guys I know have your computers open, and you're also listening on a separate call. If you have your computers open and that's connected to the audio, we can get that feedback as well. So I'm hearing a lot of people's other conversations, which I totally understand, but it's also distracting for those of us who are in the presentation. All right, there we go. So we know, having worked with counselors extensively, being in schools ourselves, we know that a lot of times whenever you hear things like this, you're like, great, that's awesome, wish I had time, wish I had money, give me something that I can work with. So we want to show you guys a couple of low-cost, high-impact approaches that are supported by research. That might be easy things to implement in your organizations that have a high impact on students going to college. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the power of a 3-minute video. There have been a couple of different studies done on this, and one that sticks out to me is one that was actually done in Canada back in 2012, where they took students who were a lot of first-generation, low-income students who previously had not thought too much about college and surveyed them to see if they were planning on going to college and if not, what was holding them back. Then they took those students, separated them into 2 randomly assigned groups. One group watched a 3-minute video on the earning differential between having a degree and not, financial aid resources that were available, what sort of benefits they could assume from getting a college degree, etc. And then a few weeks later, they surveyed the students again. What they found is that those students who'd watched that 3-minute video, even weeks later, it had had an impact on them. They were more likely to say that they were going to go to college and cited that their earning potential being higher was one of those reasons. And they were less likely to see financial aid or see the financing of college as a barrier because they'd been exposed to different forms of financial aid. There are lots of short videos like that out there. YouTube, I know, has a whole host of them. When I was teaching, I showed my students stuff on that all the time, and that was really helpful for them to get a sense that, oh, wait, there's actually different ways that I can pay for college, there's different reasons to go to college, and it can be a beneficial thing for me even if I had not considered it before. The power of college coaching and transitional counselors is another research-based approach that has shown that having a college advisor, someone who's specifically designed to help students transition to college, it's hugely impactful on the rate of college going, even if college counselors beforehand had already been incorporating college going ideas in their curriculum. So this can look a lot of different ways. I know one high school that I taught at, we had someone who part-time teaches a class and part-time works as a transitional counselor, but having someone dedicated on campus is a helpful way to get students college-bound.
Also,
and finally,
I was going to share real quick, since Lupe is on the phone, that PSJA, Far San Juan Alamo ISD down in the south part of the Rio Grande Valley, they actually have what's called the college transitional counselors, and they are seeing a great impact of seeing more of their students to be successful. And what they have is where the ISDs have hired college transitions, but they work in the IHEs at their South Texas College and at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. And they actually, once their students graduate from high school, they keep track of them at the college to help them through the process, because we know that so often that the process can be overwhelming, especially when they are first-generation college students. And so they're there as a support. And so they learn this person's face while they're on high school, while they're at high school, and then they see the person and they know they can go to there and it's a friendly face once they actually get to the college. So if you would like more information about that, we can get you information about the transitional counselors that's being used here in Texas as well. Kirsten?
Absolutely. The last research-based approach that we found is the power of texting. So if you work with students directly now, you know they pretty much live on their cell phones. And so texting can be a great way to remind students of different deadlines that may be approaching. For example, if you know your local university's deadline for housing, that might be an important thing to text out to students. If you have access to student records about standardized tests or the FAFSA or college applications, need to remind them of something, being able to shoot them a text is very helpful, so that way they can be reminded of what they need to do rather than you having to go hunt them down in school or something to that effect. We've seen this help be useful in a plethora of different ways, both when the students are at school and the summer between graduation and enrolling in college. One of our partners here in Texas, an organization called Dallas Commit, rolled out a texting program this past summer to help students make sure that they were staying on the path to college. So for any questions they had after they graduated high school, from what dorm life is like to how do I fill out these forms to how do I buy books, they were able to text with college advisors and get those questions answered, making them more likely to continue on to college as they had originally planned. All of these research-based approaches come from ECS, and that link down there at the bottom gives more information about these different approaches and other information that's helpful in advising students for college.
So as I shared earlier that Educate Texas was focused around seeing an increase of 60% of our population to have some type of certification or credential. We have within our organization called Texas College Access Network, TexCAN, which is part of not only the Education Texas, but it also is a part of the National College Access Network, NCAN. So TexCAN is a network of organizations. We have people from the institutions of higher ed, our school districts, our school counselors, nonprofits. We have profit college access providers and state agencies that are all focused around ensuring that our students have not only access to post-secondary, but they have success. So we work together in Texas, finding those best practices, those resources, aligning them, and then actually getting the awareness out to the other areas of the state, these best practices that are showing proof that they're having success with their students in post-secondary. So on the next slide, we actually have, there it is. So we actually have an area that is centered around resources. So, of course, in Texas, we actually have a large undocumented student population, and we have had two of our networks organization, RGV Focus, as well as E3 Alliance in Austin, have worked together collaboratively and created a document that helps counselors, it's a toolkit, to explain the process to be used in the state of Texas of how to get an undocumented student through the application for college as well as through the financial aid process. And if you aren't in Texas, it's a great document that you can find on our website that as a resource that you may want to consider looking at if you do have a large undocumented population to consider for your state in helping our counselors, because it's the fact that they have to become knowledgeable about FAFSA. Now they have to be knowledgeable about how to help the undocumented students, and they're two different processes. So many toolkits like this that we can provide as resources we have found to be very helpful. Within our own website, we also have the local FAFSA, and you'll see the word TASPA. That's actually the undocumented students financial awards here in Texas. We have financial aid resources that if counselors need to access it, it shows them the steps for completing FAFSA, as well as their parents and students, the guides for information. Also, we know that coming up April the 26th is Reach Higher Decision Day for college signing, and I know in Texas we have a decision day as well until May the 6th. But we actually have a guide that is attached there that the counselors they don't have to come up with the ideas. We plan and provide the toolkits to our counselors for ideas and suggestions on how to have a college signing day. The next one, please.
And all of these different resources can be found on our resources page. If you look at that little picture there, If you click network, there'll be a drop down to resources, so that way you can find it.
And even, so all the different toolkits, so just as Kirsten was mentioning just a minute ago about the best practice as far as the summer melt and the texting program, there is an actual, from Dallas Commit, they've actually written up a paper that explains their process of what they did around texting. So please look for it. We also provide on their webinars and professional development opportunities that would not only impact counselors here in Texas, but they are tools that can be utilized around in other states as well. So there is the collegeaccess.org, and you can find these resources there as tools to help your high school counselors as you're moving from your many hats that you're having to wear, from scheduler to guidance counselor to teacher in the classroom to now the college advisor. We like to try to help within our TextCan network ways to be able to support our high school and middle school counselors. The next slide, please. So as I was sharing earlier, I was excited that I was able to have Jean Giddings, and she'll tell you a little bit about herself in a moment, from Texas OnCourse to be a part of today's call. And the reason I had this is because the state of Texas realized that our counselors needed more support, PD, resources, tools, to help them to be a better counselors because of the fact that they got a high ratio of, one counselor to a high population of students, to the fact that they're having to wear many hats, their non-counseling activities, and actually even looking into their courses that they took while they were in college, there wasn't a lot provided to them on what do you do when you actually get there on filling out FAFSAs and helping them through the college advisement process. So the state of Texas in our last legislative session actually passed a piece of legislation that focused around our counselors, and I thought what was better than anything than to actually have the director be able to share with you what the state of Texas has put into place that could be something that you may want to consider in your own state. June, thank you. June, are you on? We're not hearing you, June. Hold that thought 1 second.
Yeah, June is not muted. Let me send her a message.
June? Kirsten, are you going through the slides, or is she? I'm going to jump off real quick and call.
From June, I sent her a note, everyone, so if you could just bear with us for a minute.
I'm also noticing a couple of issues, technical issues around muting and unmuting that I just had trying to answer Denise's question. So sorry about that for all the technical difficulties, you guys.
So
while we're waiting for June, I'll go ahead and get started
with
her section, and she'll jump in in just a minute. Cesar, if you could unmute user 3 as well, because I believe June had called in on user 3.
I will do that now.
All right. So like Denise was saying, the state of Texas passed a House bill called House Bill 18, which wanted to empower an organization to develop training for counselors and advisors in order to increase the number of educational opportunities available for students. So UT Austin took on that charge, and they are planning to develop an online training platform for counselors and advisors in high schools to support advising for educational pathways through college and career opportunities available for students. We also want an online instructional program for middle school students, so that way they can start a little bit early. We know that getting into the college mindset is super important. The earlier we start with students, the more likely they are to go on to college. So having a program that middle school students can look at online, preparing for high school, college, and any possible careers to get their mind set on that. And finally, we also want the counselors to have access to top-of-the-line technological tools, such as the P20 and Workforce Data Repository, so that way they can see what's going on in their schools and in their regions. Do we have June back on?
June, have you joined us? Because I tried calling her phone and it's going to voicemail, so I'm trying to figure out, because she was on the line with us, so bear with us, guys.
I think she's just trying to call in now, so she should be on in a second, everyone.
All right. So as we're waiting for June, I'll go ahead and start talking about this graph that we see here on why this is important for Texas, and most likely reflected across the nation, actually. So what we're seeing here is an expectations versus attainment gap. For 10th graders, looking at their long-term trajectory, we would expect them to at least graduate high school, hopefully go on to college, and have the majority actually attain their bachelor's degree or higher. So what we're seeing is that our expectation would be a 71.6% bachelor's graduation rate. What's actually happening, the actual attainment in Texas is much lower than that. We're seeing that only a third of students are getting their bachelor's degree, whereas half the students are starting college but not actually finishing.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I've tried to call in, but the phone's not even working to call through to y'all, just FYI.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
So my apologies. So I am talking to the computer, so my apologies if it's not as clear. So I didn't hear where you were, so I'm assuming you're on this page, Kristen. So
yes, ma'am.
I apologize, everybody. My name is June Giddings. I'm the director of Texas On Course. As we're looking at kind of having difficulty, can we jump back just real clear to give more context on the legislation real quickly? Thank you. So just real quick, House Bill 18 was passed last May in basically as to support House Bill 5, which was some previous legislation about 3 years ago that redeveloped the personal graduation plans for all of our students across Texas. So within that scope of the new graduation plan, that would require students to determine an endorsement that was based off of CTE in the 8th grade that would then dictate the type of coursework that student would then take through high school.
we quickly realized that counselors were not equipped to have this conversation, particularly at middle school, and because the advising was starting so much more earlier. So with a lot of conversations across the state, et cetera, House Bill 18 then emerged to do basically three things. We have a very specific charge to develop online training for counselors and advisors. Counselors are defined as those certified school counselors that went through a graduate counseling program, not necessarily an LPC, and then advisors, the other adults that may be like a college access coordinator or a college specialist that also support the post-secondary and career advising. The second part of our charge was to develop the online instructional program for middle school students around House Bill 5, around the graduation plan. The content of that information was geared towards for the students specifically and to the parents. And then thirdly, develop the technological advising tools using the P20 workforce data. So we're really fortunate with this House Bill legislation to be able to partner with 3 state agencies, which is our Texas Educational Agency, Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and Texas Workforce Commission. The legislative bill gives us, or grants us access to a high level of data that Texas already has, but to particularly look at the longitudinal data between the 3 agencies to really understand and follow what is happening to our students, in particular as they are selecting their endorsement and what they will go forward on. Okay. I don't think I have, okay. So why is it important for Texas? As we're looking at our expectations in the attainment gap, for 10th grade students that we know, they have the high expectation that, hey, yeah, I want to go to college, but we actually start looking at the data to see what the attainment was, we see a disconnect. So with 10th grade, we have 71% of our students saying, I want a bachelor's degree. However, only 33% of the students are actually obtaining a bachelor's degree. So what we look at, and most recently we sent out a survey across Texas to our counselors to get a better understanding of what was happening on what they were doing on a day-to-day basis, how their time was spent, whether it was around advising or around the critical needs and addressing the socio-emotional needs of our students, et cetera. So we quickly recognized that the advising kind of takes a back seat for many counselors, not because there isn't a will to, but it's a matter of having the time to. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So what's this going to look like? So again, innovative online modules. You're familiar with Khan Academy, edX, some different online modules that are already existing. We want to look and replicate what is already being available. Next. Data visualization tools. So if you are like many other counselors that I work with, and unlike people like Kirsten that like looking at data, we don't like looking at data. We don't have time to look at data. We don't have time to understand how to read the data that could really help inform our conversations with our students. So working with organizations like the Texas Advanced Computing Center to develop high-quality data visualization tools to take apart the data that counselors could use on a day-to-day basis and put these into visualizations so that you can better understand what is happening to your students, not only within your district, but your region and then across the state. Next. Sharing platform. So it is online, but counselors like to talk to one another. They want an opportunity to create this social online community. So we'll be developing some sharing platforms, things that are similar to Pinterest or Facebook, other ways to find ways to communicate to one another, but also to share best practices. So if you can look at a Pinterest, and I'm sure many of you probably have Pinterest, being able to put the resources and tools, many of which Denise and Kristen have already shared, can we put that in something that looks like Pinterest where you can easily find those tools and resources to help you do your job, but also an opportunity for you to then post good best practices or tools and tips that you already put in place on a day-to-day basis. The content and tools are designed to build technical skills. I want to repeat that. This, our job with the online modules is going to be around technical skills, the how-to. How do we best guide our students towards a post-secondary and career pathway? And it doesn't matter if it's 2-year, 4-year technical, whether it's a certificate or a degree plan. We want to make sure that our counselors have the best tools, that they are equipped to handle these conversations and help guide our students into what's in their best interest based on the course selection they've already taken through high school, but also on, how they did on their assessments. What do they truly want to do with their life? What kind of career pathway do they want? So that counselors and advisors can have a very robust conversation saying, you have an opportunity, student number 1. These are your different pathways, and let's see what's going to make sense for you, and be able to offer those opportunities. Recognition for the accomplishments. So by completing the modules, we are leaning towards building out what we call micro-credentials or open badges, so that there's some type of a level of currency upon completion. This is higher level than a certificate of completion. So we're actually working with multiple higher ed partners to also build in potential for graduate credit hours. But the micro-credentialing will be a level of currency built around there that are recognized by our school districts, by our administration, and by other organizations, to know that an individual that went through this competency-based modules that have earned the right to those micro-credentials because they have displayed their level of competency within the technical skills that are needed to help guide our students. Next. Go ahead, next. So this is the consortial approach. Yes, I'm at UT Austin, but we are working with a lot of partners across the United States, across the state, to help be part of this as listed here. Next. Quickly, we have 5 different advisory structures. So again, based on the consortial approach, we want to make sure that we are getting buy-in and feedback from all of our different stakeholders. So we have executive level board to content to technology to analytics data in our workforce. So we are looking for experts across the field to sit on each one of these different advisories to help guide our work, provide feedback, provide examples of resources, etc. So we are looking for those best resources. So if you are in the Texas area and interested, please do contact me. Next. So leveraging the best existing content tools and technologies, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. There are really good resources already available out there. Next. So looking at what is out there. So these are some examples of conversations we've already begun with these different organizations. Some of these are vendors, looking at what do they have that makes our jobs easier as counselors to help guide our students. So having the buy-in and working through our procurement with each one of these companies and organizations will help us make sure that our modules have the highest quality content and resources. Next. Leveraging best practices, again, looking outside of education, how do we make this a place where counselors and advisors want to spend their time? How do we make this user-friendly? How do we keep you interested in continuing through the modules so that you can earn your micro-credential? So using some of the things with gaming, earning those stars or their indication with a progress bar on your profile to show that you are so far along into earning the micro-credential, but also being able to grant what we're kind of like mini badges. So kind of thinking about if you have a LinkedIn profile, people can acknowledge, your skill set. Or if you play any of the games, you can get 1 to 3 stars if you complete, a session successfully. Next. So our content and our competencies are based around 3 functional areas, which is post-secondary advising, financial advising, and career advising. So within each one of those have the competencies and sub-competencies that we will then be measuring based on level of different assessments to determine not only do you know what this is, but how do you then use it and how can you train others. So we're looking at building up competencies starting at a novice level to a fluent level to an expert level. So these are the content pieces developed currently focusing around the high school piece. We have our next one, which I don't have a slide for, which is our middle school, which is focused specifically around the Texas graduation plan. Next. For more information, just trying to get y'all out on time. Here's my contact information. You can always reach Denise as well to reach me if you have more information or have any questions. Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Not a problem, June. Hey, we're okay. We actually had a 90-minute session, so we do have a few minutes. I wanted to question you just because I do know that we have people outside of Texas with us. And I was wondering, this is going to be online, and will people outside of Texas, once it's developed, will they be able to access this, their middle school and high school counselors as well?
Great question, Denise. So my initial charge from the state is to develop these modules definitely for our Texas counselors and advisors. But you're right, once this goes out online, and because we are a consortial model, it will be available. I'm already getting calls from other states inquiring of how their counselors across the state could access this so that those states would then recognize our micro-credentialing. So that definitely is on the horizon. Once it goes out online, it'll be available at some minimal cost that we're still trying to develop. So quickly, our timeline, we're beta testing in the fall with a pilot in January of 2017 with an official launch by August of 2017 with all of these modules of micro-credentialing. So Denise and I serve on a committee working with the Reach Higher initiative, so we know that there's some interest at a national level of what we're developing out. So if you are out of state, do reach out to me if there's some interest or you have some questions about how your state might be able to access this.
Thank you, June, because I think that this is, as we're moving, I think that Texas was right on as they were developing and thinking out these competencies, because these are actually the tools and resources our counselors are needing on a day-by-day basis, just because they are having to wear so many hats, and there's just never enough time to learn everything they need to be successful so that their students can have success as well. So thank you. Kirsten, are there any questions at this time that we need to address?
I have not gotten any specific ones other than asking about the availability of the slideshow. And I know that Caesar is recording us for JFF. And if you would like to have any of the resources that we talked about or have the slideshow, you're welcome to reach out to me and email me. I am Kirsten DeLay, again, program analyst. So you can shoot me an email, and I am happy to share all of that with you.
In addition, Kirsten, Denise, and all, we will also have this on the community of practice, and that was kind of how you registered. So for those folk who want to go directly to the community of practice, the recording of this will be on there in addition to the slide deck. And I will also send the recording and slide deck to the three of you guys.
So, Caesar, I also wanted to share that with their Texas College Access website, if you're interested in getting about every other week, Kirsten sends out a blast of new updated resources, webinars, professional development focused around college access and success. If you would like to be a part of our network, even if you're out of the state of Texas, we would love to send you that information. You can email either Kirsten or I, either one. And also we have some special things, like right now we have TexCan Tuesdays, which we have our partners that share those college knowledge tips that Kirsten was addressing at the very beginning. We have those different types of information, and you would be a part of that to be able to receive that. But thank you, each and every one, for joining us today, and I hope that you were able to take some tidbits back to be able to help your counselors to be more resourceful. Thank you so very much.
And thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.